conversation with us. Good evening, everybody. My name is Eric Wright. I'm the education specialist for the Wisconsin Veterans Museum. Just like to welcome you to our September edition of Movie Night tonight. But before we get started, I just want to say a quick thank you to the Wisconsin Veterans Museum Foundation and its executive director, Ms. Jennifer Carlson. They do a fantastic job in supporting us. And it's because of their awesome support that we're able to provide these free virtual programs throughout the year. Well, beginning in March when we all started to go home. And continuing out through the rest of this year. It doesn't look like we're going to be able to get back to the museum soon, but certainly as soon as we do, we're still going to have our virtual programming through the foundation, but we're also going to incorporate our live in-person programming as well. So please look forward to that once we are able to come back. But like I said, thanks to the Wisconsin Veterans Museum Foundation for contributing all their time and efforts toward our programming right now as we perform it virtually, mostly through the Zoom platform. And then, like I said, thanks for everybody for showing up tonight. I'm hoping this is a really good conversation. We've got a great movie to look at tonight. We had a fantastic conversation last month with Glory. I didn't even get through all my notes. So I'm really looking forward to, what everybody's got to say about this movie that we watched over the past couple weeks, which is, of course, Saving Private Ryan, 1998. Released by Paramount and DreamWorks Pictures, directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Robert Rodat. This film, Mike, if you want to put up that visual of the Oscar nominees and winners, it was nominated for 11 total Oscars in 1998. Mike's bringing up that visual right now. So nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Screenplay, Best Art and Set Direction, Best Makeup, Best Music, and it did win for Best Director, Best Cinematography, Best Sound, Best Editing, and Best Effects. So total of 11 nominations, 5 Academy Awards went home for this film. I kind of want to mention a little bit about the making of the film, but I think I'll save that for one of the questions that I have later on down in the order. It kind of relates to some of the filmmaking process that went on with this. But the first question I have, this is a fantastic movie. And I just kind of want to sound everybody out. This wasn't part of the original questions that I had sent out to everybody, but when I was doing my research for this film, a lot of reviews that I kept seeing said that this movie glorified warfare. And that really just kept sticking in my mind as I kept seeing these in reviews. And I kind of wanted to get everybody's thoughts on that. Do you think this movie actually glorified warfare?
I don't think it did. I think it explained warfare a little bit. The reality of it. It's not something you see on the TV where somebody gets shot and he walks back and forth a little bit and then drops to the ground. This kind of clarified some of the really bad effects of war.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I agree. I think it showed reality. I don't think it glorified it at all. I don't know that the general population out there has an idea of what war is like. And this, I thought they did an excellent job of showing what war was about.
I agree with John and Karen. I thought especially, the opening, the 20 minutes or so, they showed, unlike Hollywood movies, depictions of war in the past, they showed, bloody, horrible deaths, people suffering, people being just the chaos of war, the confusion. I didn't think it did that at all.
If it glorified anything, and I'm not saying it did, but it certainly, if it gets into the glorification spectrum, it's actually service, particularly with that scene at the very end. Mm-hmm. Really the impact of service and the impact of sacrifice. But again, I hesitate to use the word glorification. I don't think it really glorified much of anything.
No, it brought reality, I think. Didn't glorify things. It just brought a sense of realism, just shock and awe, to use a term.
Yeah, those were my thoughts. You know, I mean, especially when you look at that first 25 minutes. After watching that, if you're considering joining the military, you're probably having some second thoughts or doing some reconsidering. It really set the tone for what that type of warfare was like. And quite honestly, it looks frightening, absolutely frightening. So I was just really confused by all the reviewers who said it glorified warfare. I never really thought that was the case at all. And I just, it kind of perplexed me as to why they would that. And then another thing this movie does as well, and this is something that you don't see a lot written about it, is, at least from my perspective, it really is an exercise in moral and ethical decisions that have to be made on the battlefield. You're not always going to make the right decision. You're not always going to make the right call, but you're going to be faced with tough choices. And certainly Tom Hanks' character in this movie, Captain Miller, was faced with some very tough choices. I'm sorry, I told everybody I was having technical difficulties earlier. I'm going to have to move over to a power source because I am on my phone tonight. I apologize. And so how I tried to frame this, you know, this whole entire conversation tonight, especially with the questions I put out, was from an ethical or a moral standpoint. And the first question that I really asked in the questions that we sent out prior to the meeting tonight was Captain Miller. And of course, everybody's going to answer yes to this, so I won't phrase it the way I phrased it in the question. I'll put it a different way. What moral and ethical decisions was he faced with, particularly as it pertains to just the landing scene in the movie?
Well, they all had a duty to perform, and I think that he was following the orders that he was given, and he recognized that they were going to lose a substantial number of soldiers, but this was his orders, and he was going to carry it out the best he could.
As they're landing on the Normandy beach, a couple things that struck me was first he basically has to make a choice with the engineer battalion commander, who's telling him that he has to clear these obstacles for the tanks. And you know, Tom Hanks is trying to tell him, you need to get off the beach, you're going to get blown up. How do you think do you think he dealt with that correctly by bypassing him and just leading him to his task and his mission?
It gets tricky when you have conflicting missions and conflicting priorities like that. You know, but at the same time, we would not have gotten off that beach if it wasn't for officers like him that took the initiative and realized we have to go up and fight the Germans on the heights. You know, so it's one of those tricky things, is, you know, chicken and egg. You almost want to, if you want to be glib about it, chicken versus egg. You know, do you clear the obstacles? Do you clear the Germans? You know, which do you do first? At the end of the day, you have to do both. You know, and reasonable people can disagree on priorities. And of course, the engineer guy had his orders too. You know, it's just, it helped, to me, it helped illustrate the heightened confusion on that beach.
Yeah, exactly. And they think, I mean, they thought there was going to be more reinforcements, you know, the timing of the reinforcements was going to be better and so forth. And, you know, they were totally flying by this through their pants once they got there. It was totally what they didn't expect. By the way, this is Kent. I'm Kent.
Hi, Ken.
Hi. So, you know, I mean, it's hard to question any of the decisions as far as I'm concerned.
What do they say? Every plan really kind of ends with the first shot. And I think Captain Miller realized that he has to get moving on that beach, one, because they were getting slaughtered, and two, because there were supposedly reinforcements coming behind him. So he realized the situation was like a tube when they were pushing it forward, and there were more coming behind him. So he had to get off that beach. He had to get up. And the only way off that beach was going after the Germans. He couldn't stand there and debate. Decisions in that position have to be made quick They may not be right or wrong, but they have to be made quick and they have to be acted upon, or more men die.
Well, even those medics that were on the beach, they had to make a decision of,
Triage, yeah.
was it at all worth it to try to save anybody?
Right, right.
Because they were in the way also.
And that's the ultimate ethical decision, I guess, passing up somebody who they don't think they can save or isn't worth saving, or whatever, there's somebody else worse off
Or better off.
or better off.
You try
yeah.
to save the ones who are
Right,
better off.
Right, exactly, that's right.
Has anybody been to that section
Yeah,
of the
I
beach,
think,
by
I
the
think
way?
being a combat medic in that situation probably would have been. I'm
Go ahead,
sorry.
Eric.
Oh, I was just going to say, being a combat medic in that sort of situation, you have to make those choices. Some of them are really heartbreaking to make, but you're right. Decision. He had his orders. Like Kathy said, you have to follow orders. Sometimes they may not make any sense, or there might be a better alternative. But if you're given a task or a mission, that's what you have to carry out. And that's what was really drilled into these guys prior to going into combat in their boot camp scenarios was you follow orders or, people die. That's just the way it is. Another ethical decision that it wasn't really presented as a decision that Captain Miller made, but obviously he didn't do anything with it, was him witnessing the two soldiers shoot the surrendering Germans. Or actually, I'll get to that in a second. But when they're raising their hands and they're speaking, and the guy says, "Oh, what did he say?" He goes, "Look, I washed for supper." After they shot him.
Right.
Saw that they were surrendering. He saw American troops shoot surrendering soldiers, and he kind of turned his back to that. What do you think? What do you think about that? And just let me put in there real quick. It's really difficult to pick little pieces out of movies like this, but those weren't German soldiers. They were actually Czechs who had been forced from Czechoslovakia to come man the front lines on the Fortress Europa. They didn't want to be there. They didn't have a choice, though. And so they got killed for something that they didn't even want to do. But just that fact that Captain Miller turned a blind eye to that, and just kept marching on. I'm sure there was a ton of that during the D-Day invasions. But I just kind of want to get everybody's thoughts on maybe what you might have done in that particular situation.
I guess I'm just bound up with the sense of urgency. What's the other side of the coin? Stop, discipline the soldiers, talk to them, put them under arrest. What does he do? He's got a crowd coming up. They're still shooting at him. It's like, okay, maybe I'll put it in the back of my mind and talk to him later, but we're not going to waste any time here. Let's get moving. That's, he saw it. He registered it, but that wasn't the priority at that time. He had to get moving.
Right. It's something that could be dealt with later under the UCMJ, for Court of Military Justice. And to take action right then and there and reprimand the troops and take them into custody, you not only lose those two, you lose at least two others to take charge of those two. Plus, where are you going to take them? The whole entire, as far as you can see, is a war zone. There's nowhere safe. There's no rear to go to at that point. So, yeah, if I was a commander
And would he have lost the respect of?
Yeah, if I was in charge of that point,
there's no MP station or anything like that.
Right. So it's something that, if it was addressed later, and for a sake of Hollywood, it was not approached in the movie.
I agree with John and Steve, and I thought too,
It was a little bit through the camera angle directly pulled in on Tom Hanks' face, and you could see the two sides battling just by the look on his face for that 2 seconds. And I kind of asked questions later on about some of the camera angles used in the movie, not only by the director, but by the cinematographer, who I thought did a fantastic if you get a chance, if you are really into looking at camera angles and how they bring up emotion and impact the movie, really look at his work. He's a fantastic and I thought he did just an amazing job in this movie, just by capturing facial expressions. And that one on Tom Hanks, as he's watching these checks get shot, you could just really see his face and how he's so conflicted. He's already got the nervous tick going on. They've already showed that. A few minutes after that, they show that this unit has already been on other invasion task force. So this isn't their first rodeo. They've done this before. And I just thought it was really impactful the way they used that scene.
I was going to say too, I thought that this was
another thing I wanted to bring.
This is another. Sorry, go ahead, Eric.
No, go for it, Mike.
I was just going to say that this is another thing. I agree with what both John and Steve said. And two, it makes me think, I don't think it was right it was probably not the right thing to do, but again, this is war. And this is another reason that I like this movie compared to like other older Hollywood depictions of war, is that it seemed more realistic. It's like, the Americans aren't always doing the right honorable thing all the time. I mean, I'm sure stuff like this happens. I mean, stuff like this happens on both sides. War brings out, the worst and the absolute worst and the absolute best in people. So
there were documented cases of incidents like this in the Sicily landing for sure. And of course, as you point out, Eric, they made it clear that they were veterans. One of the things I love was the Tom Sizemore character, scooping, and he had the little France, North Africa, Sicily.
Yeah. That was awesome.
So they have gone through it, and, you never know. Plus rage of battle. I mean, there's a lot of different things going on in that scene for sure.
I also think that counterpoint, he saw that. And you got to ask, how did that play if it was registered in the back of his head that he saw that? How does that play into his later decision when he let the German prisoner go? Did he see that as not necessary to kill him there? He knew he didn't have anywhere to hold him. So should we let him go? Is that the flip side of the coin from that initial vision that he saw?
Great point.
Yeah, it's a really good point, John.
Yeah. It's a good tie-in.
Yeah, absolutely. And that scene where he lets that German soldier go, that was all brought about by storming a machine gun nest, which he thought was mission essential. The rest of the mission essential at all. As far as on the back. Kind of along those lines as well. The decision the unit to first go 5. What do you think about that decision?
Your audio's breaking up pretty bad.
Yeah, we can.
We'll get the
Understand
question.
that.
Is this any better? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, a little better.
Let me try turning off my video and see if that will. The question I was asking was the decision itself to send out the unit to find Private Ryan. Just that decision alone, as it stands alone. What do you think about that decision?
It's almost like the lost sheep, the biblical story of the lost sheep, to go after, try to save one at the expense of whatever the 99. That's what that reminded me of that.
But I think, and General Marshall kind of echoed it, that not echoed it, but he did mention it in his yes, you're going to go get them, because the issue with the Sullivan brothers was
Exactly.
fresh in their mind, and they didn't want to repeat of that. I think that was the. I don't know if that was the right decision to say, okay, we're going to send 7 men out to find one, but I think he realized that the backlash after losing 4 Sullivan brothers and now losing 4 Ryan brothers might be hard to, 5 Sullivan brothers, right? Might be too much to take care of. So.
Well, and I just was reading a bit about the Sullivan brothers from the Navy Times, and there was a theatrical film made about them during the late stages of the war, and it really whitewashed their entire family story of being juvenile delinquents and so on. And it was clear that the Pentagon wanted to create this, sort of martyrdom for the Sullivan brothers through the release of this film, and their parents were out raising money for war bonds and all of that kind of stuff. So, this mission of Saving Private Ryan does fit right into that whole notion of a PR campaign in the midst of war as well.
Well, this is loosely based on a real story. The Nyland Brothers, there were 4 of them.
True.
And one was killed in New Guinea, one was killed in Italy, one was shot down over Burma and believed dead. He crawled out of the Rangoon prisoner of war camp at the end of the war. But when they thought that the 3 older brothers were dead, they went and got the 4th brother, who was in Normandy, if I remember correctly,
Boy.
and brought him stateside. So this was done, which is interesting when you think about that. Compare that to the policy of other militaries, particularly like the Soviet military at the time or the German military, where you were fighting and you're basically on the front line until a bullet takes you off duty. To be really glib about it, that's actually says something about the value that our armed forces puts on its personnel, to some extent, and the humanity
And the families.
And the families, exactly, because they also serve who stand and wait.
Yeah, I agree with what Chris said. I think it probably it probably was the right decision, because, as you know, besides winning the war, fighting on the battlefield, I mean, they have to keep up morale on the home front too, and it's going to look really bad from a PR perspective if entire families of sons start getting wiped out and starts getting in the press. That can't be good for home front morale.
I think of the logistics issues of doing that. For one, I don't think a squad of 5, 6, 7 people would be able to carry off a mission like that. And plus, at that point in time, again, the entirety of France you didn't know where your people were and where the enemy was. I mean, it would just be a needle in a haystack. And to me, just the idea of doing that, whether it's, it's a good thing to do, an ethical thing to do, but I don't understand how that could ever get pulled off.
Yes, I think Tom Hanks said a needle in a stack of needles.
Yeah,
he did. That's right.
You're right.
That's why they sent Rangers.
And Chris, you're absolutely right about the Nyland brothers. And then, with the Sullivan brothers too, somebody else had mentioned those. And shortly after the incident with the Sullivan brothers on the USS Juno, that's when Congress and the Department, well, it wasn't really the Department of Defense then, created the sole survivor policy. And that's been in place ever since. And particularly because of the Sullivan brothers, there was 5 of them that were lost. So I really don't think that they wanted to go through that again. And like Mike said, that's just not a good PR. There's just no good PR value there. And especially when you're looking at World War II, you really have to energize the war front. You have to constantly keep them energized, or the home front rather. And that just wasn't going to be a selling point for them at all. And again, I apologize for my technical issues. I hope I'm coming through okay. I'm trying to switch back to a more platform right now. do you think that it's important to consider external circumstances when you're conducting warfare, i.e. Ryan's mother and how she would feel losing all of her sons to war? Or is the end goal of victory the only consideration that you should have?
I think it's a distractor. I don't, you can't, to me, you can't pull in exterior factors like that because it just complicates your thought process and your actions and what's going on.
I agree. It's almost contradictory to the training that has been put forth. It's when I say charge, all I want to see is butts, so not let's discuss it. So to have other outside issues come in and I'm breaking up here. I don't think we should have that. So is that breaking?
No, I can hear an echo.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with you, John. You want to, like we talked earlier, you want to complete the.
Eric, I don't know what you did.
But you're breaking up again.
But we are getting broken audio and,
yeah, you're echoing.
And a lot of echoes.
How's that? Is that any better? Sorry, folks. I really do apologize for my technical difficulties tonight.
Yeah, the audio is
that audio is fine.
Yeah.
Good.
That's a lot better.
Excellent. So yeah, it's a hard decision to make. Ultimately, like I said, victory is the end goal. You want to achieve this as quickly as possible. Sending troops, gallivanting through the French countryside looking for one particular soldier doesn't really lend itself very well to that. But at the same time, like we just mentioned, there's other considerations that have to be taken into account. General Marshall in this movie was played by, I can think of his first name. I can't think of his last name.
Harv Presnell.
Harv Presnell. Thank you very much. From Fargo fame. That's where I remember him most from.
Oh.
Right. Yeah.
But I really liked his Marshall character in this movie. And then when he read the Lincoln letter, that was kind of one of the notes I had earlier was, maybe if you weren't of the mind to send these troops out to look for Ryan, would the Lincoln letter have maybe changed your perspective a little bit? I don't know that it would have changed mine at all, but, maybe some people it might have. And then, of course, when you have General Marshall telling you this is what you're going to do, it doesn't matter if your mind's changed or not. You're going to go do it.
You can do it.
True.
And I thought they actually played that up pretty well. When the mission is assigned, you can kind of see everybody's reaction. And even it comes back again and again through the movie. It's like, really? This is what we're doing?
Right.
Yeah, it came from the top.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there was I have a question here later that kind of deals exactly what you were just talking about, Chris. The "Are we really doing this?" attitude. But I'll get to that in just a second. I don't want to skip this question because I thought it was kind of an important piece of the movie, an important section, and it was especially with Barry Pepper's character, Private Jackson. The theme kind of continued throughout, but it was set when they were storming the Normandy beach. Private Jackson had already made his way past the berm wall into the foxhole or the divot that was created by the artillery shell, and he's trying to take out the machine gun nest. And as he's sighting the machine gunners, he's saying a prayer. And then it shows other people saying prayers throughout the beach for different reasons. One is having his last rites read. One is trying to get some sort of courage because he's hiding behind an obstacle. And so, just the different ways that religion was used during that opening scene. I kind of want to get everybody's thoughts on that too.
I thought it added realism to what we were watching. I, have no doubt that soldiers on that beach were doing exactly that. It just felt right to show part of that.
Yeah, and then like you said, it kind of set things up nicely, and especially the way Barry Pepper, the way his character continues through the film. He is constantly evoking his faith as he's trying to kill Germans.
Right.
Is that kind of like a dichotomy there, you think?
Yeah. I'm sure that every time he sights in that rifle, he says a prayer. I don't know if that's in his own mind granting himself some absolution for what he's doing, but he's following the mission, and he knows he's probably conflicting. He's taking a life, so he's looking for some type of religious contact.
That's some kind of strength or faith.
Asking for God's forgiveness or something. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Plus, I believe the prayer mentioned something about, shield me too. I mean, it was also probably he was asking for some protection himself, because it's kill or be killed. He had to. I mean, thou shalt not kill, but if it's kill or be killed, you got to protect yourself. So he must have been, if he was a person of that deep of faith, he was probably very conflicted on this whole thing.
Right.
Yeah, and Kent, that kind of that statement, "kill or be killed," kind of leads me right into my next question. When you look at Private Caparzo, the Italian, played by Vin Diesel, when they're first coming into the French village, he exhibits 3 distinct signs of not really having that mentality. He's kind of a little lackadaisical in his soldiering, I thought. He's looking for apples as he's under fire. He ignores Captain Miller's orders completely about the little girl. The fact that he was kind of, I guess, appalled that the German soldiers would keep firing on the runners when we would do the exact same thing. And so I think his soldiering slipped there. And I just kind of wanted to get some thoughts on that. What kind of focus and attention do these soldiers really need to have while they're under fire?
I did a lot of thinking about that when I read your question on it. And I came up with my own conclusion that he's probably playing the naive, straight out of high school, 18, 19-year-old kid. No life experience, never been off the farm or small town USA, and so yeah, he's naive and distracted, and a lot of stuff he doesn't understand. He was trained fast, given a weapon, okay, go here, do this, do that, and he's just doesn't understand. And taking the French girl, maybe that's a good thing to do, but yeah, in their situation, absolutely not, because he can't care for her, he can't provide for her safety. But he's just, as teenagers are, just headstrong, as though, no, this is what we got to do. That was my spin on it once I thought about that question that you posted.
No, that's actually a very good response, and it does kind of highlight the other side of it. I didn't particularly look at it like that. Simply because I hadn't thought of it like that. It's been so long since I was a dumb recruit right out of basic training, headed to the war zone, that I kind of forgotten what that is like. So that is a very good and valid point that you bring up. And then you talk about, him hardly being able to take care of himself and the little girl. He couldn't take care of himself because he was shot almost immediately afterwards, and didn't make it out of that French village. And then taking the little girl itself, that was the first time that you see a real instance of insubordination from this group. And you start to see it more throughout the film, although, well, no, I won't say that because that's not true. But you do see insubordination starting to play a factor in the group itself as tension becomes tighter and as the drama, to use the old quote, as the drama thickens. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But kind of going back to the theme of morals and ethics, I asked the question earlier about, just the overall mission of going to find Ryan, whether that was a good choice or not. But once they get to the machine gun nest, the German machine gun nest at the base of the radio tower, the rest of the unit is telling Captain Miller, we don't have to take care of this. We can bypass this. We're here to achieve our to complete our mission, achieve our task. If we bypass it, we're all the better for it. And we're getting closer to the end of our mission. Captain Miller says, no, we're going to assault this so that we save lives, that might be coming down the road later. What do you think the best choice would have been here?
Bypass. I watch that show often. Many times I've seen it, and every time we come to that part, I'm like, Captain, listen to it. You're supposed to go get this dude and save him. You're not supposed to engage these people. The next patrol is going to see this for what it is. They're not going to get, hoodwinked. I mean, and of course they attack, and that's when they lose their medic. And it's just like, no, because there's a line he says, I don't remember his name. The guy that plays, he's the kid from New York.
Ryman, I think was his name.
Yeah, Ryman, yeah. He says something about this isn't our mission. And Captain Miller says, what is our mission? I thought our mission was to win the war. Well, no. Yes, ideally. Well, that was Eisenhower and his mission was to win the war, but the captain's mission was to go save Private Ryan. And he kind of, to me, loses track of what he needs to do. So that's a little bit of an annoying part of the movie for me.
Yeah, I mean, so sorry, go ahead.
I agree with Steve. No, I was kind of surprised that it does seem like a distraction from their immediate mission. And in other parts of the movie, Miller is so focused on getting Ryan, whether he personally thinks it's a good decision or not, that, yeah, I would have been with his men, and I was surprised that the decision he did make.
I agree. That was a classic case, I think, of and he's been we've seen that up to this point in the movie and throughout the entire movie, we've seen these life and death immediate decisions without a lot of discussion. This was in my opinion, a stumble in this movie, and I thought it was a clear-cut go around it. Go around that gun, continue your mission. So.
Yeah, and I think what the director was trying to do here with that scene was show, because you're right, John, up until this point, Captain Miller has, made the right decision, the right call. He's always put his troops in the right places. But I think the director wanted to show that, this character isn't flawless. He's still prone to make mistakes. This definitely being, a more serious one, of course. But I think it was kind of nice to see that, I don't know, I've always envisioned Tom Hanks as he's just a fantastic actor, a fantastic person. Every role you see him in, you just love it. And I think he just wanted to show some of the flaws that he has as this character in this movie. And I just thought it was, from that standpoint alone, kind of refreshing to see that.
And that's also the scene, I think, where they let the guy go. They let the
Yes.
Right.
prisoner go. Another bad decision, FUBAR, that, comes back to bite him.
We said earlier that there were some kind of counterpoints, and here we have a decision to kind of do something that wasn't in the mission command or directive. And then when you get to Private Ryan, and the decision is, do we stay with him and fight, or do we haul him back? That's the other side of the coin. And they decided to stay. So I think we have these back and forth arguments and decisions being made here.
Yeah, and it just highlights, the point that I made at the very beginning on how difficult it is, to not only be a soldier under these circumstances, but to command soldiers under these circumstances. You are forced to make those decisions at a moment's notice, and they have to be made right then and there. And, you hope you can make the right one. I was not an officer. I was enlisted. So, you know, I got the orders instead of, you know, giving them. But my son is an officer. And I know Secretary Kohler's on here as well. She was an officer in the Navy. And it's much more difficult to have to give those kinds of commands, those kinds of orders, especially when you're under, you know, under fire, particularly. I don't envy the people that have to make those sorts of decisions at all.
And as Tom Hanks said right after that particular scene, he said, you know, I'm just a teacher. Back home, I'm a teacher. And, you know, here he is giving orders, life and death orders. He said, I'm just fighting this war so I can get back to my wife. That's all I want to do. So, you know, he's just an everyday person who was put in this circumstance as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. High school English teacher, part-time basketball coach, his rose garden, you know, those are the things that are on his mind.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. Here he is having to give life or death commands, you know, to people that are going to follow them. He just hopes he makes the right ones.
Right.
The last, you know, counterpoint or moral and ethical question I want to ask is the decision to stay at Rommel. After they get there, they find Private Ryan. He lets them know, hey, thanks for coming out to get me, but I'm not leaving my unit. We're expecting some serious action here. There's not many of them to begin with. And if you take me away, there's going to be even less. And so Captain Miller decides to stay. He decides to help with the fight. And actually does a pretty good job. I love the sticky bombs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are actually in an Army field manual. I do not know which one, but they were actually part of you know, things that you could improvise with during World War II. But the decision to stay and help fight in Rommel versus saying, okay, you don't want to leave, I'm taking my unit and we're going back. I've already lost enough guys, I'm not going to lose any more. Does anybody want to speak to that decision that he has to make there? It's actually not even a decision, it's a choice.
Well, he's already fulfilled the mission that was the mission that nobody liked anyway. It seemed like then it was time to, they were headed back to combat anyway. You might as well help this, you know, severely staffed situation and, you know, get back to combat right away.
I think he understood the strategic position too. It's one of only a few bridges that were left, and I think that weighed on it, that he understood the gravity of having that bridge saved so that that our troops could cross it or destroy it so that they couldn't come back. So I think that played a little into it also.
I'm not so sure that they'd fully achieve their mission, because when you find Private Ryan, you still have to get him back.
That's true.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't want to go, plus the fact, you know, it's not just Miller, but it's what's left of his squad. You know, you're not just taking Ryan away. You know, there's a substantial reinforcement there that they can provide to the defenders of the bridge. And you know that relief, the cavalry is coming, metaphorically and literally. It's on its way. So if you can hang on and keep Ryan alive during the next battle, then you'll be able to get him out once the rest of the army, you know, once the relief column shows up.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe they were fulfilling their mission by keeping him alive during that battle. Yeah.
Hi. That part was really interesting to me. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Scott Kohler. I'm Mary's husband.
Hey, Scott.
Because in the contrast to going after the machine gun nest at the radar site, nobody complained about, hey, we're going to get killed. And I think that was, I noticed this watching it this time. And, you know, you had the first time where they thought they had a James Ryan, and you always highlighted when when Miller is talking to the Ryan that they found, all the troops gather around to see what this guy is. And they want to know, is this guy worth doing everything they're doing?
Yeah.
And when he comes and says, no, I'm not leaving. I'm coming here. I've got a job to do and I'm going to do it. And you can do whatever you want. And that's when they said, okay, this guy is worth fighting for.
Yeah.
I think that first recognition when they took out that little half track and the 101st, the 3 or 4 guys from the 101st came up out of the reeds and identified themselves, there was a little recognition in the group that was going out to find Private Ryan that, hey, he's a fighter. He's not just like the first guy we found that was sat down and cried all the time. This guy's a fighter. Maybe we should stick with him. So that I think they respect or accepted him as a true soldier. So
Right.
I think that helped in some of the decision making after that.
Well, and I kind of want to go back to Scott's point a little bit, because he basically said 3 words there that reminded me of something else I wanted to ask. He says, is this guy worth fighting for? And looking at that perspective, what do you think about the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie with the elder Private Ryan at the Normandy American Cemetery? The whole reason that movie is bookended with those 2 scenes is to kind of put just what Scott asked. Is this worth fighting for into perspective? And especially with the closing scene, and he even asks his wife, he turns to his wife and he says, tell me I lived a good life. Tell me I've earned this. The reason Spielberg put those 2 scenes in the beginning and the end of the movie was to ask that overall question of all of us is, since World War II, have we earned what the greatest generation has given us? Have we done the right things with it? That certainly is a larger question that we don't have to answer right now because we've only got about 13 minutes left. And I think answering that question would probably take about an hour or so. But just to think of the opening scene and the closing scene of the movie as asking Americans, and in a larger sense too, Europeans, anybody who was connected with that war, the greatest generation gave us this victory. Have we since then basically earned it or fulfilled, what was kind of expected of us after this? And I think that was a really sneaky move by Spielberg to put that in there like that. And then to, just have you think about that as you're leaving the movie. The first time I saw it, I was absolutely captivated by the movie. But that thought after I left kind of just turned in my mind for the next couple days. Like I said, we don't have to answer that one because that's going to take forever. I kind of want to get on to some of the filmmaking aspects of the movie. One in particular is the art and set direction. This movie did win an Academy Award for art and set direction. Did you find the sets and the locations and everything realistic as you were watching the film?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody's looked into any of this at all. The only section of the film that was shot in France was the Normandy American Cemetery, the opening and the closing scene. None of the rest of the movie was shot in France at all. The D-Day invasion scene was shot at Ballinsker Beach in Ireland, and they employed about 2,000 extra Irishmen to help with the all the background people in that scene. The French villages were shot at the British Aerospace Factory at Hertfordshire, and that set was later reused by Tom Hanks and others for a band of brothers. So I don't know if anybody gets into set design or not at all. There's people out there who will travel the world just to go to different sets. And I think that is one of the places that people go to, along with Northern Africa to go see some of the Star Wars locations. The Iowa cornfield where Ryan's mother is living in her farmhouse, that was shot in Wiltshire, England. All the rest of the movie was shot in England, except for the D-Day scene in Ireland and the cemetery scene in France. So I always find it kind of neat that when you watch a movie, you think you're right there, wherever there is supposed to be, whether it's France or New York City or something like that. And then you find out later, oh, well, that was filmed in Louisville, or, that was filmed on an Irish beach or something. I always find that kind of neat to find out about a movie. I don't know if I'm boring you all with my set location fascination or not. But I always thought that's kind of cool to find out where these scenes are actually shot at.
It is cool, Eric.
I thought it was really cool too, Eric. And I actually listened to watched the extras part on a second disc, and they said that they built a whole French village from scratch, like about 30 minutes outside of London, and then they built it all from scratch, and then they slowly had to, make it look like had been bombed and had been, experienced war, which I thought was fascinating how it really did to me look like a real French village.
Yeah, and when I first saw the movie, you could have asked me right then and there, I would have bet a whole paycheck that was actually filmed at Normandy on the beach there. Not a chance. No. Good old Ireland. I also want to know about the use, or actually the lack of use, of realistic military vehicles. We see a little bit at the beginning. There's some airplane CGI'd at the end of the movie, but you don't see large-scale use of realistic military vehicles in this movie. And I was just curious if that took some of the realism away for you, or if it allowed you to focus more on the story and not, some of the accoutrements.
I didn't think that the story needed them. The way they portrayed it the entire time, you didn't need vehicles in it.
Right.
Or other pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
It made it a more human story, kind of more focused on them and their weapons, and
it also made it more intimate. Because if you can contrast that to like Fury, which is a tank crew,
right?
It tried to be intimate, but even within a tank platoon, because they're spread out, the vehicles and everything, you don't quite get the same interplay, the human aspect that you're talking about, that you get with the infantrymen in Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that, Chris. Especially if you contrast this against movies like, The Longest Day or A Bridge Too Far, where it's just massive amounts of usually realistic-looking vehicles. I really hate to see a World War II movie that starts parading M60s through there that are painted like Tiger tanks. I just want to pull my hair out every time I see something like that. Also, I wanted to ask, throughout the film, a lot of the characters gave a bit of a vignette or a soliloquy, about what life was like back home, what they experienced before, they joined and had to go serve. And I just wanted to know, what was your favorite little story that came out of all those characters?
The Vecchio scene in the church.
a V for victory.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Kent, how about you? Did you have one?
I like the entire scene when they were listening to Edith Piaf on the Victrola right before the action started.
Right.
And they just gave little bits of their personalities and all of that, and of course the translator had suddenly sort of become part of the, had a little more accepted, and I like that scene just for all those many reasons.
I guess that was one of the things that kind of, it's probably nitpicking, but kind of bugged me about the movie is, I don't know, I felt like the characters overall were a little stereotyped. You have the wise guy New Yorker, and then you have Private Ryan is like this wholesome all-American from the Midwest, and I just think that, and then you have the bookish Upham who's like just gets completely freezes when he gets into battle. That I don't know. I feel like they could have fleshed him out and made him a little bit less stereotypical.
It's funny you say that too, because some of the like some of the military things too, like with Tom Sizemore's portrayal of like a aged NCO and with the privates. So it's just funny when you say the stereotypical, because I think they also did that too with military rank stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, having watched all the old war movies growing up and what have you, to me that seemed more like Spielberg's homage to the traditional Hollywood war movie.
I think there's a lot of that goes on too, though, during the down times when you're not busy. Because I was in the service, but I was never to a war zone. But like after hours and your work day is done and you're all just chilling, there's a lot of camaraderie and joking and poking fun of each other. And to me, it was good to see that, and that builds character and it builds the brotherhood to like they'll do anything for each other. You know, I think that added to the story from it. To me, it did.
I thought the stereotype always was that every guy had a nickname, but they didn't seem to have nicknames too much in this. They went by their real name.
Right.
That is true. Yeah.
Yeah, there was no Tex from Cincinnati or, you know, New York from Kansas or anything like that. We are running out of time here, but I always like to pose this very last question. I'd like to know who's your favorite character in the movie and why?
Well, I liked that Ryben, the Ed Burns character. He voiced in such a dramatic way when he almost left the mission altogether. Everybody's qualms about it, I think. And he was there till the very end. He was right next to Miller when he was gunned down, I think. And I believe probably the only, they implied kind of the only survivor from that unit. And he and Ryan were the two guys kind of left over from the main characters. So I thought he had a key role.
All right.
Mine is maybe kind of quirky, but when you talk about the sense of duty and staying on the mission and not throwing in the towel at any point, in that opening scene, there's the soldier who gets his arm blown off, and he's walking around and he finds an arm, and well, this one must be mine, let's keep going.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
I could hardly watch that.
Yeah.
Yeah. When that movie came out, they screened it for World War II veterans, and a lot of people that were at D-Day, they had to stop the movie, and a lot of them had to go out and take a break because it was so real between those actions and those camera shots, which was the first time we've seen camera shots. Yeah, we've seen many movies with those kind of shots since then, but that was the very first one to do something like that. And it was very traumatic for a lot of the veterans.
Yeah, the VA actually set up a hotline after that movie was released for World War II veterans who needed to talk to somebody, kind of like a PTSD sort of thing. And over the course of 6 months, I believe, it received over 2,000 calls. So there were a lot of veterans who were utilizing that VA source just from this movie alone. Steve, who was your favorite character?
Yeah, that's hard to nail down, but I think I'd have to go with Sergeant Horvath, Tom Sizemore, because he's right there with the captain. He's the second in charge, so to speak, and the captain says something and he makes it happen. He goes there, he does it, he figures things out if it's not straightforward, and he's Johnny on the spot. I guess I see some of myself in him. I don't know if that's good or bad or what, but I just like Sizemore's character.
Now that's my choice as well, Steve, and I'm absolutely with you. That was me when I was a sergeant. So I can totally relate. John and Karen, how about you two? Who is your favorite character in the film?
Well, mine was Horvath. He was the glue that tied them together. And the War Department needs to speak.
Yeah, no, it's Captain Miller. because he's Tom Hanks. I mean,
There is that, yes.
I can't dismiss the two, so that's it. That's why.
Okay, Forrest.
Scott, Secretary Kohler, how about you? Who are your favorite characters?
We have to unmute.
Yeah.
I've got to go with Tom Hanks because to me he's the epitome of the citizen soldier who, as we learn, becomes, is a high school English teacher, gets commissioned in the Army, and becomes essentially the ultimate professional. I'm going to get the job done, but I'm going to take care of my people as much as I possibly can, but still getting the job done.
And I'm going with Horvath because it may be a stereotype, but it's accurate that you have the senior enlisted that you have to be able to depend on. And in this case, Tom Hanks was able to. Tom Hanks, the character, Captain Miller, had to do what he had to do. And Horvath knew that, and that he had to keep the unit together. He tolerated to a point the dissent of the soldiers, but he always worked to support the leadership and keep the unity of the troops together.
And then Brian, I'll go with you last. Who was your favorite character?
No, mine was Horvath too, because I'm an NCO. But I also spent I spent some time in Ranger Battalion, and they always made us like memorize all of our history. So and these guys in World War II are like the base of Ranger Regiment of today. So I've always watched like the movie in a different sort of light, because I was always like, this is why they're giving this mission to Rangers, because these guys can do it. But I like Chris mentioned it before when he had that sand. That was another really cool thing, because in Ranger history, those other locations and like dates are like classic Ranger battles. So like this guy has really seen some crazy stuff before he even came to Normandy. So I thought that was like a cool little thing in the movie.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree. Rangers lead the way.
I have a curious question.
Sure, Don.
In the landing craft at the very beginning, they were just getting ready, and they had those early plastic sheaths over their rifles. They're not plastic because plastic wasn't around. I forget the name of the material. But Tom Hanks said, "Sam Adams, your weapon." And I'm pretty sure I have to play it back, but I thought he said, "Sam Adams, your weapon." And I looked at Karen and I said, I have never heard that phrase.
I think he might have said, "Keep the sand out of your weapons."
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the thing. Keep the sand out of your weapon. Keep his actions clear. Yeah.
Well, I will see your doctor. Thank you. Keep the sand out of it. Thank you. I was wondering what Sam Adams had to do.
No, don't feel bad at all, John. I've had to go and look up movie lines because there's some of my favorite films. I'm like, I swear he said this, but it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then you have to go and look at the actual script, and then you're like, okay, I got it now.
Much more sense. Thank you.
Yeah, that does make sense now, doesn't it?
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. This was a great conversation. Once again, I did not get through all of my notes. I did not get through all of my questions. So I'm always happy when that happens. That means we're generating good topics. We're having good conversations. And that's exactly what I'm trying to aim for these movie nights. I really appreciate everybody's attention tonight. Next month is going to be something a little more fun. October, Halloween right around the corner. I tried to find a Halloween themed sort of war movie, and about the closest I got was Apocalypse Now. You can't get really any more bizarre than that war movie.
Which version?
Well, you can watch any version you like. I've seen many different versions to include the half-hour scene with the French plantation owner.
Yeah.
There's just so many different versions of that. The one that I have is just the regular screening version. It doesn't have all the extras. But if you watch that one, you can definitely bring those points up. Those questions will be coming out on Monday. So if you're going to sign up for that movie night next month, look for those questions to come out to you immediately. Apocalypse Now is on Netflix currently, so you can find it there if you have Netflix. Otherwise, you can stream it for a relatively low cost through streaming services, or your local library should have a copy or two. But that's what we're going to look at next month, so I'm really looking forward to that one and see what kind of conversation we could generate with that bizarro movie.
So, Eric, this is Mary Kohler, and it's a sad note, but I'll end up with a haunting that I met a person who was one of the sailors in those landing craft who had to be responsible for the craft and have the soldiers leave that craft. And so in 2000s, early 2000s, he was still haunted by that fact that he was responsible for that vessel as those soldiers had to disembark. So sorry to end on that note, but a haunting that is reality.
Yeah, and that's something I've always kind of wondered too. Is you're absolutely right. You know, they essentially, you know, pull up, they drop the landing platform, the troops get out the best they can. But, you know, nobody ever talks about those boat drivers. You know, they got to turn around and leave the action. They just dropped off 30 soldiers to go to their deaths, probably. And they're just backing out of the situation and going, you know, back to the ships. I always did wonder, you know, what kind of experiences they had or what they felt as they were doing that. So definitely, thank you very much for bringing that up. That just kind of, you know, just one more aspect of it that kind of gets overlooked when you're thinking about, you know, things like that.
Another great program. Thank you.
Yes, well, I appreciate everybody's attendance and everybody's great points. I'm glad to see so many people coming out and watching these movies and talking about them with us. I can talk about movies all day long. My fiance gets kind of tired of it, actually. So this is a good release for me. And I look forward to seeing everybody next month. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, folks. And thanks again.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
And I'm waving and my camera's turned off, so you can't see me waving.